Hello learners, in this particular session we're going to discuss about permissions. We're going to ask the permission to our user and then wait until that permission is going to get either approved or denied. What we also going to intend to learn is integrating plugins that can be helpful to our app. To know more about the plugin, stay tuned along with the session. What we're going to discuss in more detail in this particular session is permission. Now, when it comes to permission, you'll get a pop-up which tells that this particular app is requesting for camera, microphone, GPS, etc., of which we're going to request for camera and microphone. Camera is going to be getting requested for clicking photographs and recording videos, and in order to have voice in our videos, we're going to request the microphone. Now, when it comes to permission, did you notice I used a word request, which means it can be approved or denied. Now let's say our user, who's going to be very much of a skeptical user, he would be taking 5 to 10 seconds in order to decide whether he has to approve the permission or deny it. In that case, what we're going to try and do is learn about a future function. When it comes to a future function, this will be continuously waiting until we get a verdict. So the verdict can either be an approval or a denial. Now, let's say even in both the scenarios, we have to show something to the user that whether the permission got approved or whether it got denied. Well, what I'm going to show to you is how to wait until this permission is getting approved. Secondly, how we can use plugins into our app. So this is going to be the very first introduction to you for plugins. Perhaps plugins make a lot of things easier into a Flutter developer's life. I'm going to show you this particular thing by implementing a permission handler plugin. So here I'm on pub.dev. This is the official website for Flutter, wherein developers like you and me can upload our projects and make the world accessible to our projects. In fact, this has a well-documented section which can help you to implement one particular module into your app. There are endless number of plugins, but we're going to call all those permissions, we are going to have all those plugins that we will be requiring into our app. Hence, pub.dev allows us to customize to a very good extent. What I have done is created this entire my app from the scratch, wherein I'm going to have the camera app getting implemented. Now, from module 2 and module 1, you have already understood that the stateless and the stateful widgets, they have got a different life cycle. What a stateful widget life cycle, how to make a particular stateless widget, everything in detail shall be discussed in this particular module, starting with my first camera implementation. I'm going to create a camera screen. So initially what I'll try and do is head over to draw.io and create a blueprint of my camera screen. As we are going to deal with permissions, I'm going to put a button as ask permission, and once you click on this button, then we're going to get that pop-up to allow the camera and the GPS permission. Now let's go create a UI around it. Class camera screen, extends, stateless widget, return scaffold. Come on, what's a scaffold? From the topmost to the bottommost pixel of your app is basically your scaffold. What I'll do is put an app bar so that we can understand where exactly we are going. I'll put it as camera screen. So now, second upon, I will be having the body, in which at the center of the screen I'm going to have a button, and this button shall be responsible for asking permission. Well, next what I'll try and do is this camera permission repeat. Well, next what I'm going to try and do is this camera screen I'm going to call from my material app that's going to be here. And then do a hot reload. Well, this is what my screen presently looks like. What I'm going to do is next head over to permission handler plugin, copy this plugin, go to this pubsec YAML file and add a plugin to ask hardware permissions in app. Well, I'm going to request camera and microphone. Basically, these are hardwares that would be present in the device. What I'm going to do is, in order to make the code accessible to me, I'm going to do pubget that will locally download all the code from the pubdev into my machine, that is my computer, and then I can use this code. What I'm going to do is, inside this base directory, I'm going to create permission utils. Class. Let's click on ignore for this. What I'll try and do is, as I've downloaded a new plugin, let's do one round of flutter clean and followed by pubget. So basically the previous build folder I deleted, and once I try to compile my code, this time along with the permission handler code, it will get compiled. If any error would have been there, it would be getting caught in this particular way. Let's try to kill our app and run the app meanwhile. Well, over here, let's go to the permission utils. Class permission utils. Now, do you remember the part wherein I was explaining that our user is a bit skeptical and he's going to take some decent time in order to approve or deny the permission? So the future function is a perfect combination in which I could do so. Let's create a function, ask camera permission, and make it as async. What's async? Well, it's a keyword which you're going to use along with the future. Let's say initially what I'll try and do is check the status of the permission. I'm going to put await permission dot camera dot status. Now, if status dot, according to you, what do you think should be the permission status before the app is asking permission? Is granted? Definitely not. Is denied? Can be the case. That's because until now the permission was never been approved. Is limited? Cannot be the case. I'm going to talk about is limited later on in details in our session. Is permanently denied? No, the app is being installed for the very first time. So how can the camera permission be permanently denied? In this way, is denied is the best combination. Well, what I'm trying to say is, when you're trying to do your code, never try to memorize it. In fact, take suggestions and then try to implement your code. So in this case, what do? We are going to follow permission status. And then create the permission list the very first one is going to be camera, followed by microphone. What I'm going to do is just request these two permissions. My code is going to be very limited to this. Next, what I'm going to do is, when it comes to accessing any hardware, it's mandatory that going into my Android module, I have to declare those permissions in my manifest file. Where you can see the manifest file is inside Android, inside app. I'll head over to the main.dart file. I'll head over to the Android manifest file and put over here users permission Android dot permission dot camera. I'm going to do Control D, change this to record audio. Well, what is the usage of this permission in Android manifest file? I'm going to talk about it in very much in detail, but the thing is, let's try understanding in case of iOS module, how does the permission get configured? Same like in Android, how we have done in the manifest file. In iOS, there is this info plist. What I'm going to try and show is, first run the example on Android and then ask you to do the changes for iOS. Let's try running our app and heading over to our ask permission button. We'll first create the object for the permission utils. Then I'm going to call ask camera permission. So this future function is going to give a pop-up and then wait until we answer. So here is my device. What I'm going to do now, as we're going to click on this ask permission button, what do you notice is this pop-up dialog. Now it's continuously waiting until I either say while using the app, only this time, or don't allow. Hence, what I'll try and do is click on while using the app. What you notice, the permission flips over to ask to record audio, which means the microphone permission, and hence over here I'll see while using the app again. So in this way, I've actually approved both the permissions. But how shall I know that from this function that the permission was approved or denied? Well, let's try putting a bool. Is camera permission granted? So I'll put this particular status, copy this, paste it over here and check if it was granted, followed by Control D, in which I'm going to check for microphone permission being granted. Let me change this to microphone. And finally, is all permissions granted? as camera permission followed by microphone permission. Then do you see this as void? This is when we do not expect this future function to give any callback. But in this case, I want a Boolean callback which tells me was the permission approved or denied. Hence, I'll put over here future.value is all permissions granted. Now, do you notice everywhere I'm using this await, which basically translates into English wait until something is done. Hence, this particular await keyword waits until the permission got approved. This particular line waits until we get the status as granted or denied. Hence, wherever now onwards you're going to see a future function, await basically means we are waiting until this particular line of code completes. Now, because we have used a future function here, and like I told you, it's going to be some time that your user is going to take some decent 5-second, 10-second duration. So let's have was all permission granted variable here, in which I'm going to wait for this function to complete and then print on my console permission granted, and I'll just put was all permission granted. Let's try doing a hot reload, and this time it should be getting me true. Now when I click on this, what do you notice? The permission pop-up did not turn up for the second time. That's because I had already approved the permission, hence it says yes, it's true. So well, what we have done in this case is not irritating our user by keeping this check. Hence, we are also ensuring that the behavior of the user is only be there for asking the permission for once, and next time we can access the camera without the permission. Well, that was awesome to understand about the permissions into cameras. But now, since you have the knowledge for having the permission, I'm going to put that knowledge into practical world by using your camera as a live preview into our next session. In the next session, we're also going to talk about how you can have images and how you can have the resolutions for a particular camera be configured. In order to learn, stay tuned and keep learning with Hoping Minds. Cut.